So you're here in Brussels before the European Union directive on patient mobility comes into force, and you have some quite serious concerns about it. Could you just explain what you think is wrong with the directive and how we can correct it?
Well, I haven't actually got any concerns with the directive as such, although it could be a bit stronger. My main concerns are that there's been such little publicity and that very few people know that it's what is happening and it's coming into force. Hopefully there'll be quite a lot more publicity over the weeks to come, but at the moment nobody knows it's happening.
When you say that nobody knows this is happening, it's very often that the ordinary citizen in the street isn't quite aware of the detail of what goes on. But in the medical profession and the doctors who are at the sort of coalface, as it were, how well are they prepared for this directive coming in?
Oh, they're not at all prepared for it. What is going to be important is that the actual countries in the EU are prepared for it. And to do this, they are obliged to set up national clearing points, things called this, national points where people can make inquiries about all that is available and how to go about it. And they shall be in position that they, by law, European law, they've got to be in position by in 2 days' time.
And how well prepared are we for them? What is the state of play with these centres?
Well, I phoned up the Scottish one. Every country has one, but some countries will have more than one. And he promised he would have his website up and running today. I haven't actually been able to check yet. I checked with the English one last night, and that is up and running. And they will be putting onto their website, as will all of these central points, all the details of all the other countries' details, you see, so that hopefully with this interchange of information, all in place by Friday.
Well, that's asking people to move quite quickly. I mean,
oh, they've had 2 years for this.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, the law, actually, the directive was actual fact passed in 2011, February, I think, 2011, but to be enacted in 2 days' time.
And what are the key aspects of this directive that people should be informed about?
Well, there's one central point here, and that is, if you can get it here, you can get it there. So anything in the way of healthcare, I can get here. I can go and get it in any other European Union country. That's the simple explanation, simple reason for all this. But of course, there are a lot of details as well to go are behind that.
Okay, but I mean, you're welcoming the directive and you're seeing it as something good for the profession and good for the citizen.
It's going to have an awful big impact. I mean, it's been described as the greatest single, most significant and wide-ranging European health legislation in a generation. And it's been described as a watershed by a number of leading authorities. I mean, to give you an example, for the first time ever, the NHS in Great Britain is going to have to accurately cost all its treatments, because otherwise how can it compete with other countries if it doesn't know how much their own treatments cost, you see? So that's going to make and other countries are going to have to do the same thing as well.
I mean, surely the thing is about many of these systems is they'll have different ways of calculating cost, and how can I put it, cost is one of the figures that can be massaged slightly.
It's got to be transparent, and it explicitly states that in the directive. And of course, ultimately, anyone can appeal to the European Commission.
But of course, that could be some time after they've needed and hopefully received treatment.
Well, yes, of course. That is always a drawback in this.
Yes.
So usually with the threat of a complaint, they'll sharpen up their act, quite frankly, and that I mean, there are very big penalties attached here if they don't comply.
And I mean, how would an organisation like yours be affected by this? There could be some difficulties, couldn't there? Being caught in the middle?
Well, no. I mean, of course, I'm a great believer in the European Union, and as such, I have got a right to provide my services across borders. And healthcare has now been judged in a European Court of Judgment as an economic activity. It wasn't previously, but now it has been. So I'm entitled as a right to provide this activity anywhere in Europe, as is a patient entitled to go across a border to access services in any other country. So these are fundamental rights under the treaty.
And of course, I mean, one of the areas in which you specialise in is in the treatment of addictions.
Indeed, yes, yes.
And of course, this has been a problem that has plagued many parts of Europe, and more particularly your home base in Scotland, particularly Edinburgh.
Too right.
How is the case of treatment going, and how could the cause of treating addicts in Europe be affected by this legislation?
Well, I mean, it would be, for instance, well, to take an example, we have many Dutch patients coming to our hospital in Scotland. And hitherto, they have not been able to get the kind of treatment that we provide in the Netherlands, which I think they acknowledge is very good indeed. So we have, as I say, we started to quote to the Dutch insurance companies the legislation as it was coming through over the last 15 years it is now. And they got the hint very quickly, and so then started to give us contracts. So we've got contracts with all the Dutch, or majority of the Dutch insurance companies. If not, we would have started to enact and complain. In fact, I did make one complaint to the European Commission, and I think that speeded some of these contracts up.
I mean, the interesting thing is that the European Union is trying to tackle the scourge of substance abuse and addiction, and also on more legal substances like tobacco, where we've had a tremendous fight. And so presumably companies like yours have to have a good track record of success for people to come. So do you see this as perhaps being a way of offering services that are often not really available in many countries in the European Union?
Well, absolutely. And for instance, talking about England as such, I mean, the treatment availability, especially for residential care, is very poor indeed. And we have plans, perhaps through our Dutch company, of setting up a treatment centre in the Netherlands for English people, and Scottish for that matter, to access, which they can't do at the moment. Now, they can be refused treatment in the UK because there isn't sufficient of it, but if they cross a border, they can't be refused. So this could be one way of compelling the British authorities to provide more treatment.
I mean, treatment plans, and forgive me if I'm not particularly up to speed on this area, seem to have changed. There was the replacement theory of using methadone, and then other people have come in with different ones, and I believe you used a program based on the Alcoholics Anonymous program, is that correct? Given the financial cost alone to society of one addict, the cost of treatment must be a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
And this is presumably why you've got insurance companies involved. But the point is, if this is such a cost to society, why are governments reluctant to properly fund treatment centres?
Well, one of the reasons is it always comes at the bottom of the pile as far as priorities are concerned. I mean, you take operations, for instance, urgent operations, or maternity services, eye services, all these kind of specialties. And then you look at someone who perhaps may be perceived to have caused his problems himself, it comes at the bottom of the priorities. I don't think it should be, and I think the cost to society is enormous by leaving people untreated for their addictions. And the government do appreciate this now, but they're still very, very slow to provide the services, proper services. They have provided a lot of services, for instance, for methadone maintenance, but personally, I don't consider that treatment. It's just maintaining somebody on their addiction, just to keep them quiet and to make life peaceful for everybody. It's not healing them. It's not getting them better.
Yeah. I mean, do you see any link between, say, the financial crisis and as increasing numbers of people going towards drugs? There's anecdotal evidence in some places, but I'm not sure if there's any hard facts around. Has there been an increase since the crisis?
Very, very hard to. Some people may be laid off and get redundancy money, and if they've got a problem, they'll start drinking a lot more and drinking through their redundancy money. That's one scenario. A lot of people, if they're made unemployed, will use their unemployment money in different ways, unemployment pay itself, in drugs and drinking. Other people have got more financial commitments and will perhaps cut back. Mm-hmm. And certainly there has been a downturn in drinking figures. So perhaps we'll see that the people who hadn't got a problem with alcohol, for instance, will cut back on their drinking. People who have got a problem will increase it. Yeah. So there's swings and roundabouts, in fact.
And do we have any kind of rough figures of what the cost would be? I mean, your expertise is mainly in Britain. What the cost would be of setting up adequate treatment facilities against the cost of addiction and abuse?
Well, they say the figure is, I think the latest figure is for every £1 or €1 for the sake of argument saved, spent on treatment, about 2.5 would be spent on putting right the damage that's caused by the addiction. I would say it's higher than that, but anyway, that's a kind of official figure.
Yeah, and just finally, because you've got your big base in Edinburgh,
mm-hmm.
and we're facing a growing drift between England and Scotland, of which there's going to be a referendum vote. In the theoretical situation that Scotland gains independence now or in the future, they seem to be trying, or at least talking, about trying to make Scotland into a much healthier country than it is. How do you see, from your independent perspective, the Scotland's ambitions towards health?
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, one of the things they're trying to do now is to put maximum or minimum pricing for alcohol. But that is being held up by the drinks industry, appealing to one of the European courts and under competition laws. So whether we're attached to England or attached to the UK or not, and we will always remain committed, Scotland, to the EU, I can't see that particular policy would make much difference. One area which we can deal with if we are independent is we can put the taxes up. Now, London won't let us put taxes up. We could put taxes up, and of course no courts can stop us putting taxes as we wish onto our drinking, for instance. So that would be one big difference where we could act, and I hope they would act in that way. Because I mean, the price of drink in the UK as a whole has come, in real money terms, has come right down. And it would cost somebody about £50 for a bottle of cheap whiskey in the 1960s. Now it costs £10, £11. I mean, that's the cheaper you make drink, the more people will drink.